I just had twins. A $122,000 gift would be great, Sherry said in a triumphant voice. I responded to Sherry merrily. Okay, I'm going with my husband, the real estate mogul who has $500 million. What? Sherry's bewildered voice came through the phone. She probably heard from our parents that my husband was just an ordinary guy. What do you mean by $500 million? It means exactly what it sounds like. Sherry seemed confused by my words. I couldn't help but chuckle. Then Sherry snapped and retorted, that can't be true. That just can't. Well, let's talk in person, including about what you did back then. Wait a minute, Amy. All right, I'll see you tomorrow, I said one-sidedly and hung up. Sherry called me several times, but I ignored them all. I can't wait for tomorrow. I laughed loudly, imagining Sherry's regretful face. My name is Amy. I'm a 38-year-old housewife. I live with my husband Joe. The housekeeper handles all the chores, and I live a luxurious life every day. But actually, Joe is my second husband. I divorced my first husband 6 years ago. I met Joe at a restaurant I worked for and remarried. I married my ex-husband Matt at the urging of my parents. Apparently, my father liked Matt, who was the president of a company that did business with my parents' company. I had no right to refuse, and the marriage was arranged the day after our first meeting. Although arranged marriages were rare nowadays, it wasn't surprising since I, as the eldest daughter, had been constantly told to take over the family. Our married life wasn't sweet at all. Matt, the president of a company with an annual revenue of $50 million, rarely came home and spent his time playing around. Even when he did come home, he would just look at me with disdain and head straight to the bedroom. When I was fed up with such a life, I was suddenly called back to my parents' house. You should get a divorce. Huh? Why so suddenly? I was confused by my mother's sudden words. Matt's company was doing better and better. There was no benefit to divorcing now. I had a little hope that my parents sympathized with my situation, but then I saw a shocking sight. Why are you two, Matt and Sherry? Sherry, it's my younger sister. Our parents adored Sherry, who was 10 years younger than me. That was exactly like saying I didn't matter at all. Sherry walked into the room arm in arm with Matt. Amy, I really like Matt. Can I have him? Have him? Matt isn't a toy. But Matt says he likes me more than you, right? Sherry leaned on Matt as she said this. Matt looked at me with a smug smile. As soon as I saw his eyes, I had a bad feeling. Of course, I'd prefer someone younger and prettier like you. You become a better wife for a CEO. What, Mom? As I faced being abandoned for Sherry's youth, I looked to my mother for help. I believed that despite raising me strictly as the eldest daughter, my mother loved me. I had thought so. I told you to get a divorce. Sherry wants him, so give him to her. You're her big sister, aren't you? No way. I was stunned. Though my mother had always favored Sherry, I thought she'd support me in such a situation. Then my father spoke quietly. Just divorce him already. From today, Sherry will be the heir of this family. It's disgraceful to have a tarnished record. Once you divorce, leave immediately. Even you, Dad? Through tear-blurred eyes, I signed the divorce papers. After gathering my belongings as my parents ordered, I was quickly thrown out. Out of the house, Amy. You'll struggle from now on. So take this as alimony. Sherry is so kind. Be grateful. They mocked me as they threw bundles of cash at me. I held the money, feeling lost. What am I going to do now? As a housewife, I had no means to earn money. I had only trained to be a bride and had never worked even part-time. For now, I decided to go to a hotel and think about my next steps. First, I needed to secure a place to live. I moved to the neighboring town and went to a real estate agency. Thanks to my savings, I could easily rent a place for one person. I refused to use the alimony thrown at me by those two. I resolved to get my revenge someday. Out of the house, Amy. You'll struggle from now on. So take this as alimony. Sherry is so kind. Be grateful. They mocked me as they too threw bundles of cash at me. I held the money, feeling lost. What am I going to do now? As a housewife, I had no means to earn money. I had only trained to be a bride and had never worked even part-time. For now, I decided to go to a hotel and think about my next steps. First, I needed to secure a place to live. I moved to the neighboring town and went to a real estate agency. Thanks to my savings, I could easily rent a place for one person. I refused to use the alimony thrown at me by those two. I resolved to get my revenge someday. After settling into my one-bedroom apartment, my next step was to find a job. However, I struggled to find one. Then I received a call from Sherry. "Amy, didn't you know Matt has influence over this entire area? You won't get hired anywhere around here." "No way." I was devastated. As Sherry said, I couldn't find a job. Without work, my savings would eventually run out. I decided to move to a distant town. The new place was a peaceful town with a pleasant sea breeze. I got a job at a small restaurant where I could live and work. "Hey, get me a beer right away. I'd like some chicken over here." Certainly, even though I was new and inexperienced, the customers were all very kind to me. Gradually, I got better at my job, and eventually people started calling me the mascot girl. "Your smile gives me the strength to keep going, Amy." "Amy, do you have any plans about marriage?" "Oh, I don't." "Such a waste," they would say, pushing me to remarry. Being young, I was often encouraged to find another husband, but each time, I would avoid the topic. I couldn't bear the thought of marrying another man like Matt. "Amy, can I get a beer?" Joe asked. "Sure thing, coming right up." While everyone else was pushing me to remarry, Joe, a regular, never teased me about it. I enjoyed our conversations so much that I started looking forward to his visits. Joe asked me out on a date 3 years after I moved to the town. "How about we go to the beach?" "Huh? I mean, it's right there." Joe was usually calm but was now fumbling with his words, which made me chuckle. I didn't mind at all and decided to accept his invitation. Our first date was just a walk on the beach in front of the restaurant, but we talked a lot. Joe told me he had lost his parents early and had no other family, living alone in this town because his parents had loved it. I told him about my family and my past with Matt. Joe cried for me. I realized I should have cried like this long ago. Watching his tears, I felt a strange sense of relief. We started going out together frequently and eventually began dating. I honestly still can't remember which of us said "I love you" first, but it felt very natural for us to be together. A year later, Joe proposed to me. "I want to be buried next to you." "Is that a proposal?" "That's what I mean." I smiled warmly at his uncertain proposal and accepted. We got married. Although I had no intention of telling my parents or sister, Joe insisted we should at least inform my parents, so I contacted them for the first time in 4 years and went back to my family home. "Oh, you're alive, remarried? Do as you please, but don't expect any support from us. If you're marrying such a shabby man, never come home again." Hearing this in front of Joe made me furious. Joe might not be into luxury, but he was wearing a high-end suit today. I didn't want any further relations with parents who could say such things. I was about to speak out in anger when Joe intervened. "Then I'll be taking your daughter. We won't be in contact again, and we won't ask for any support." My parents were shocked by Joe's straightforward attitude but quickly became angry at his perceived rudeness. Joe brushed off their insults with a smile and took my hand as we left my family home. "I didn't expect them to be that bad. I'm sorry for putting you through that," I said. "It's okay, don't worry about it. I'd actually feel a bit relieved." Joe replied with a smile. Joe relaxed his shoulders, relieved by my expression. We then returned to our new home. Not long after, I started receiving an increasing number of anonymous calls. I ignored all of them and consulted Joe. "Let's ignore them, but it's creepy. So let's change your number tomorrow." "Yeah, thank you," I said, very grateful for Joe's prompt response. The next morning, Joe made time for us to go change my phone number. The anonymous calls stopped immediately, and I felt relieved. Her response confirmed that she hadn't changed at all. I wanted to hang up immediately, but Sherry started talking excitedly. "I just had twins. A $122,000 gift would be great," she said triumphantly. I responded to Sherry merrily. "Okay, I'll come with my husband. The real estate mogul worth $500 million. "What?" Sherry's bewildered voice came through the phone. She probably heard from her parents that my husband was just an ordinary guy. "What do you mean by $500 million? "It means exactly what it sounds like." Sherry seemed confused by my words. I couldn't help but chuckle. Then Sherry snapped and retorted, "That can't be true. That just can't." Well, let's talk in person, including about what you did back then. Wait a minute, Amy. Alright, I'll see you tomorrow, I said one-sidedly and hung up. Sherry called repeatedly, but I ignored every call. I was looking forward to tomorrow. I waited for Joe to come home and explain the situation to him. Joe smiled and made a suggestion. I'll go in my usual clothes. I nodded in agreement. Both of us dressed in our regular clothes and headed to my parents' house. We're home. Oh, you're back. Did you bring your husband? Wait, what? Sherry rushed out to the entrance with a smile, but she was shocked by our outfits. It was no wonder we were wearing plain, no-brand clothes we bought from a discount store. Our t-shirts and pants cost around $20 each. What are those shabby clothes? Isn't your husband a real estate mogul? I responded with a smile. Sherry interpreted this on her own and gave me a condescending look. So, it was a lie. After all, you can't hide it no matter how much you try to pretend, Sherry sneered. Oh, it's not a lie, I said, pointing to the screen on my phone. It showed Joe's name and photo. Sherry stared at it intently and then screamed. Anderson, the CEO of that major real estate group. No way. It's not a lie, I repeated. Sherry glared at me resentfully, then pointed at our clothes and started to berate us. If that's true, then why are you wearing such shabby clothes? I gave her a mocking smile. We dressed to match the economic situation of this household. What are you saying? Our family is falling apart? No, I just thought this level of courtesy would be appropriate, I replied. Both Joe and I usually wore formal attire when visiting someone's home. We had never committed the faux pas of showing you two reasons for this. First, to make Sherry misunderstand and take her down a peg. Seeing the frustrated look on her face meant the plan was a success. Second, I wanted to confront my parents without any pretenses. I walked towards the living room, Joe following with, Sherry trailing behind. Having Joe with me made me feel incredibly strong. I threw open the living room door. That's noisy. Open the door more gracefully, like, Sherry, what's with those cheap clothes? I'm really disappointed in you, my parents said as soon as I entered. I couldn't help but laugh. Seeing me laugh, my parents looked at me as if I were some suspicious character. Sherry said you married a wealthy man, but it seems it was just your boast. Yes. You can't even dress decently. I don't want someone in cheap clothes coming here. My parents were speaking their minds freely, but I responded with a bright smile. Actually, this is exactly how we wanted to appear. We wanted you to judge us based on appearances, because it's what you always do. But let me introduce you properly. This is Joe Anderson, CEO of Anderson Real Estate Group. Their faces paled as the realization sank in. Said, judging people by their clothes is why your business is failing. What? My parents' eyes widened in shock at my words. Sherry, however, looked puzzled. I decided to explain things carefully. I heard last year was a deficit and this year looks questionable too. How's that going? I'd like to say it's not, but unfortunately, our family ties mean it is. My father glared at me with a frustrated look. Seeing his expression, I remembered that I resembled my mother while Sherry took after our father. Since Sherry married Matt, my father's company had been declining. After Sherry's call, Joe confirmed that the business was not only failing to recover but was worsening. Actually, this is the second reason why we wore inexpensive clothes, I continued, by letting our nearly bankrupt parents underestimate us first. We wanted to increase the impact when they were told that we knew about the bankruptcy. I sighed and kept speaking to my glaring parents. I'm planning to renounce my inheritance if it comes to that. You are planning to inherit, you money grubber. All of Mom and Dad's money is mine, Sherry, who had been silent, cut in angrily, interrupting my explanation. It seemed she didn't understand what I meant. I could teach her carefully, but honestly, it's a hassle. However, if I don't explain, we can't move forward. Just as I was thinking this, Joe spoke up for me. Your parents' company is on the brink of bankruptcy. What? Sherry looked at our parents in shock. They averted their eyes uncomfortably. Then, unbelievably, Sherry clung to Joe's arm. Well, Joe, can you take over their debt? You can have me in return if you want, she said nonchalantly. Both Joe and I felt a wave of tension. Joe sighed deeply and then responded, I'm not interested in your offer, Sherry. My loyalty and love are with Amy. As for the debt, we have no intention of taking it over. We came here to make it clear that we know about your situation and to inform you that we won't be supporting you financially. Sherry's face turned red with embarrassment and anger. You can't just abandon us. Joe looked at her calmly. We are not abandoning you. We are setting boundaries. You've taken enough from Amy. It's time you face the consequences of your actions. My parents remained silent, absorbing the gravity of the situation. Finally, my father spoke, his voice trembling. What will we do? That's for you to figure out, I said firmly. I've moved on with my life and so should you. Joe and I left the house, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. As we walked away, I knew that we had finally closed a painful chapter of our lives. Joe forcibly removed Sherry's grip and spoke. Could you stop? It's disgusting. Disgusting. Me? Yes. It's very off-putting, emphasized Sherry, perhaps too shocked. Staggering away from Joe, she glared at us with teary eyes. How dare you say something so rude to me? I'm prettier than that plain Amy. Huh? That's impossible. Amy has a better figure, clearer skin, and is not only beautiful on the outside but also has a pure heart. Joe started listing my good qualities. He mentioned my cooking skills, intelligence, kindness, and honesty. It sounds like I'm perfect, which was a bit embarrassing. I lightly tugged Joe's sleeve twice, hoping to stop him. He turned to me and smiled warmly. Even her modesty is one of her charms, unlike you. Sherry stumped her foot in frustration. She had gained quite a bit of weight since the last time I saw her. She looks at least 44 less heavier. Her once beautiful face was covered with acne and blemishes, far from the beauty she used to be. I figured our parents had pampered her too much, and her metabolism had slowed with age, leading to her weight gain. I sighed inwardly, thinking it was not surprising considering Sherry's lack of self-control. But then, my mother jumped to Sherry's defense. Sherry just gained a bit of weight from having kids. She'll be back to her old self soon. No, it's clear that this is due to poor habits. Shut up. My mother yelled at me, her face turning red with anger. The mother I once feared when I lived at home no longer scared me after 6 years. I decided to reveal the next truth. By the way, there's a possibility that the son you had isn't even Matt's. Wait, is that true? As I said this, I heard Matt's voice behind me. When I turned around, I saw Matt holding 2 babies. Oh Matt, long time no see. Never mind that. What do you mean? Matt approached me with a furious expression. Joe stepped in between us and began to explain on my behalf. Amy told me about you, Matt. So I had someone investigate while we were heading here. I didn't expect to find out the truth in half a day. Joe took out his phone. It showed a photo of a man and woman holding hands and entering a hotel. Matt screamed when he saw it. Sherry, you're still seeing that guy. He then started talking about the man without any prompting. Right after we got married, she cheated with that guy. She said it was just once. So I forgave her. Matt glared at Sherry. She glared back and retorted, you forgave me. Your company is just a subsidiary of my dad's now. So don't get cocky. Weren't you the one insisting it was better for my company to be under yours? Sherry and Matt started a nasty argument, each blaming the other. It turned out that soon after their marriage, Matt's company had become a subsidiary of my father's company, and it quickly went downhill. I shouldn't have divorced Amy, Matt muttered. What are you saying? You'd rather be with Amy than me? That's absurd. Sherry screamed hysterically. Matt shouted back, of course. Amy didn't mind my affairs and let me do whatever I wanted. If it was Amy's child, she would have taken care of it. So I wouldn't have to. As he said this, Matt suddenly looked as if he realized something. I had a bad feeling about his expression. That's right, Amy. It was fate for us to be together. Matt declared, caught up in his own delusion. He knelt before me, but I stepped back in disgust. Joe stepped between us. Amy is my wife. There's no chance of her remarrying you. What? Get out of my way. Matt shouted angrily at Joe from behind. I clearly rejected Matt. There's no way I'd remarry you. I don't want your child. Oh wait, you couldn't even have a child. Well, even if you could, it's still a no anyway. What do you mean? I couldn't have a child? Matt looked at me dumbfounded. My parents and Sherry had the same expression. I decided to explain it to them. Back when we were married, I went to the gynecologist. Remember that? I had some tests done. Oh, I vaguely remember. You dragging me to the gynecologist, but that was because of you. Matt seemed desperate to believe it was my fault, insisting repeatedly that his body was healthy. I decided to confront Matt with the truth I had held on to for 6 years. Matt, the one who can't have a child is you. That's a lie. Then what about these kids? They're mine, right? Unfortunately, they're not yours. Matt slumped in defeat at my words. A housekeeper quickly took the babies from his arms. Behind him, Sherry stood with her mouth agape. So, Sherry, it seems the children are Matt's after all. Amy, why hadn't you told me Matt was infertile? If you had then. Sherry immediately started to shift the blame onto me. I listened in silence until she finished ranting, breathing heavily. Then I smiled and spoke. You brought this on yourself. What did you say? Then give me Joe. Joe already refused, remember? Then give me money. We're family, we should help each other. Are you the one to say that? I was irritated by Sherry's words. In my times of need, my family had never been there for me. I had only memories of being treated coldly during my struggles. I'm not part of your family anymore. Of course you are. Come on. Amy, don't be like that. Sherry's words irritated me, but I knew responding in kind wouldn't help. I took a deep breath. Just as I was about to reply, my mother spoke first. Amy, we're sorry for everything, but we're really struggling. If you truly have money, maybe you would help us. Yes, as Sherry said, families should help each other. Let's put the past behind us. What on earth are these people talking about? I was utterly astonished. It's the victim's prerogative to forgive, not the perpetrators to demand it. It was pointless to expect them to reflect on their actions. Letting go of the last bit of sentiment I had for my family, I gave them a cold stare. Noticing my look, they flinched but quickly put on ingratiating smiles. We apologize for everything. Please, yes, we're apologizing, so you should compromise a bit. Their insincerity was palpable. I sighed and with a smile that didn't reach my eyes, asked my mother, why should I help the parents and half-sister who mistreated me? What do you mean, half-sister? Sherry, it's my daughter. My father, still clueless, didn't understand, but my mother seemed to grasp the implication. Her face turned pale. I don't know what you're talking about. You can pretend all you want, but I saw you cheating, Mom. Yes, I had seen my mother with another man when I lived at home. It was shortly after my marriage. My father and Matt, Joe already refused, remember? Then give me money. We're family, we should help each other. Are you the one to say that? I was irritated by Sherry's words. In my times of need, my family had never been there for me. I had only memories of being treated coldly during my struggles. I'm not part of your family anymore. Of course you are. Come on, Amy, don't be like that. Sherry's words irritated me, but I knew responding in kind wouldn't help. I took a deep breath. Just as I was about to reply, my mother spoke first. Amy, we're sorry for everything, but we're really struggling. If you truly have money, maybe you would help us. Yes, as Sherry said, families should help each other. Let's put the past behind us. What on earth are these people talking about? I was utterly astonished. It's the victim's prerogative to forgive, not the perpetrators to demand it. It was pointless to expect them to reflect on their actions. Letting go of the last bit of sentiment I had for my family, I gave them a cold stare. Noticing my look, they flinched but quickly put on ingratiating smiles. We apologize for everything. Please, yes, we're apologizing, so you should compromise a bit. Their insincerity was palpable. I sighed and with a smile that didn't reach my eyes, asked my mother, why should I help the parents and half-sister who mistreated me? What do you mean, half-sister? Sherry is my daughter. My father, still clueless, didn't understand, but my mother seemed to grasp the implication. Her face turned pale. I don't know what you're talking about. You can pretend all you want, but I saw you cheating, Mom. Yes, I had seen my mother with another man when I lived at home. It was shortly after my marriage. My father and Matt were on business trips and Sherry was on a trip with friends. It was just my mother and me at home. When I returned home from grocery shopping, asked by my mother, I found an unknown car parked in front of my house. Thinking we had a guest, I went to the living room but found no one there. Then I heard voices from the bedroom. I wanted to cover my ears, but the next words I heard made my eyes widen. He doesn't know that Sherry isn't his daughter. Sherry isn't Dad's child. At my mother's words, I hastily covered my mouth with both hands. Otherwise, I might have screamed out loud. I wanted to hear more, but I heard them coming out of the bedroom, so I quickly left the house, killing time until the man left before returning. That incident stuck with me, and soon after marrying Joe, I investigated. It turned out the man was David, an old friend of my father's, and the affair was still ongoing. "You've been cheating on our family for years, and when Sherry said she wanted Matt, you forced me out. What is going on?" My mother shook her head vehemently, her face pale. Seeing this, my father seemed to understand, his face turning red with anger as he glared at my mother. As a parting gift, I told my father the name of her lover. "Mom's lover is David. David, she cheated with him, and still is." My father stood there stunned. Since David was practically a best friend, the betrayal must have hit him especially hard. Even so, I felt no sympathy for my father. "I'm not Dad's daughter." Sherry looked as shocked as anyone, and no one was attacking me. "Are we done here? I've decided to renounce my inheritance, so do whatever you want, but I won't help you. Don't ever contact me again." My voice wavered slightly at the end, but I had said everything I needed to. It was time to leave. I gave Joe a look, signaling that we should go. Just before leaving the room, I turned and took an envelope out of my bag. "Oh, and this is the alimony you threw at me. I haven't used it, so it's the same amount as back then. Consider it a baby gift, though it's a bit more than you wanted. Think of it as severance pay." I placed the envelope in front of Sherry. She was too shocked to move. Leaving the four of them behind, we walked out of the house. Later, I heard that my parents didn't divorce, but their relationship became cold. My mother was strictly restricted in her movements, and her relationship with David was forcibly ended. My father stepped down from the post of president, tried to live on his pension, but due to his lifelong spending habits, he couldn't manage and had to sell the house. When I visited the area the other day, I saw that the house had been demolished, and I felt a sense of relief. They now live in a rental apartment and have to work to pay the rent. My mother, who had never worked before, couldn't keep working at one place, and was constantly changing jobs. My sister and her husband divorced. Sherry took the children, however. I heard that Sherry, who had never worked, couldn't support two children and ended up moving in with her lover. However, her lover was married, leading to another major conflict. Though I could have sympathized with her as she was my half-sister given her past behavior, I couldn't help but feel it was what she deserved. As for Matt, after the divorce, he tried to rebuild his company, but his bad reputation led to losing many business partners. After leaving the parent company, his stock plummeted, and his business couldn't survive. His company eventually went bankrupt. Trying to use a dating app without money, he fell victim to a marriage scam and lost the alimony he got from me. He also got into debt with shady lenders and now works in construction to pay it off. Joe told me that Matt had called him, begging for money, but Joe refused, saying he had nothing to do with Matt. Apparently, Matt was still asking Joe to divorce me until the end, so he didn't deserve any sympathy. As for me, I recently found out that I'm expecting our first child. Joe was overjoyed when he heard the news and has already started designing a child-friendly house. He's even begun screening babysitters, which makes me laugh at how excited he is. By the way, we're having a boy. I have cut ties with my family, and Joe doesn't have family anymore. However, the people in the town are very kind and have already offered to help in many ways. Joe and I talk every night about how lucky our son is to be born into such a supportive community. "Amy, how are you feeling today?" "I'm feeling pretty good today." "That's great. I hope you have a healthy baby." "Thanks so much." Everyone greets us warmly when we go for a walk. I'm so happy about it that I truly feel coming to this town was the right decision. "Amy, I couldn't decide between blue and green for the baby's bedding, so I bought both." "You're getting ahead," I scold Joe, who brings something new home every day. I am knitting baby socks and plan to finish them a week before the due date. "Oh, he kicked." "Really?" "Daddy's here." Joe responded to my words by putting his ear to my belly and talking to our baby. Right then, the baby kicked again. He responded, "He loves his daddy. And daddy loves you so much too." "Joe, you're so silly." Despite feeling a bit exasperated, I can't help but find Joe adorable. Basking in this happiness, I resumed knitting the baby socks.